Welcome back to the 1111 Synchronized Podcast. Hope everyone is well, staying safe, taking it in. Today is the first day of the best days of our lives. So just join me by taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Life is good. All is well. Yeah. So, we're getting right into it. But first, if you have any topic requests that you'd like to hear, if you'd like to be a feature, please let me know. Please send those to my inbox on Instagram at Agent K21 Podcast, on Instagram and Twitter at Agent K21. Find me on all the social media platforms, Snapchat, Facebook, etc. And I'm on there. How much I use it, that's to be determined. But yeah, y'all find me on all those platforms and let me know what you want to hear. Let me know if you want to be a feature or would you like me to be a feature on your page. Let's collaborate. So here we are, the 8th month of 2020. It is a privilege and an honor to be here because not everyone can say the same. So a lot of stuff is going on in the world, in the universe at large. Just a lot of things. So we have a full moon coming up. We got the Lion's Gate coming up. And if you want to know what that is, or if you're curious about that, I encourage you to research it on your own. Find those tools that naturally flow to you and you feel naturally drawn to. Go to those things. We got albums dropping, we got visual arts dropping. Billie Eilish just put out a project, a single. It's dope. Beyonce just put out a single, an album in a visual art. So, yeah, shameless plug for Disney on that one, I guess, because that, good stuff. And if you have any thoughts about how that was for you, leave a comment, leave a subscribe, leave a star rating, all that good stuff. Definitely appreciate everyone who's listening. Very grateful for all of you and sending positive vibes. So we're going to keep it moving with this law of attraction. And, previously we talked about resistance. Now, you got resistance, and the opposite of resistance would be allowing. So if you're in the spiritual community, you probably have heard the phrase, go with the flow, follow your joy, do what resonates, chase your bliss, all of those things, great stuff. You probably have heard those sayings before. Now, initially, for myself, hearing that phrase, go with the flow, it's actually kind of funny because when I was younger, that was like my slogan, go with the flow. Anytime I was around people who were just uptight or just always in their head, I was like, yo, man, chill, go with the flow. Like, what's up? But over time, we kind of go through that forget-me-not program, right? Where we kind of have to refine who we are and redefine who we are. And what happens is we kind of go back to who we were before. And definitely did a whole episode on that. You can check that out. I think that was season 2. But when we say go with the flow, what does that mean? What does that mean to you personally? Like, answer that question for yourself. What does that mean to you personally when you hear that? Initially, when I heard going with the flow from the spiritual community aspect, it felt like kind of like this selfish, self-indulgent, no responsibilities. I just go on the whim. I just do whatever I want. I have no care or consideration for anyone else besides self. I'm going to just do whatever I want, regardless of who depends on me or responsibilities, etc., etc. But really, what going with the flow to me means more so now is go with your spirit, go with your intuition, do what resonates, that really is what I take from it. And it's to say not to go with my flow or anyone else's, but to go with your own unique, individual, universal flow. Meaning, if I feel something, maybe kind of investigate what that means. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of different teachings, different modalities that people will use, and all good stuff. But I think having discernment and wisdom will actually allow us the capacity to apply them in any given situation, for our highest good. So some things that happen when we come into this world is we are kind of programmed to not go with the flow. We're taught to do what our parents did, or follow society, or, go to school, do what everyone does, and then die. And that's just not going to jive for us no more. So really going with the flow is finding out who you are and staying true to yourself, being authentic and following that regardless of who's with you or not, choosing you over everything else as far as in your alignment and your attunement to your source. Like, that is what your flow is flowing through into you. And so we come into this world pure and whole and holy, or if you want to call it that, and worthy. And then we kind of forget all of that. And so we kind of adopt the principles of resistance as the catalyst, or the standard, right? We have to resist our emotions, and depending on what kind of background you come from, that gets more reinforced. If you come from a religious background, don't trust your emotions, don't trust your feelings, they lead you astray. What? And it's like, instead of it being have discernment, it's just like, no, just don't trust yourself. And it kind of creates this resistance. So anytime we might naturally feel we should go left, we might second guess ourselves, or we might do things that are not in alignment with us, that are just things that we've seen or heard or believed to be the highest path based on someone else's limited knowledge. And people often will try to, convey what we should do based on their limited understanding of us and limited understanding of themselves. And so really going with the flow is finding out what works for you and not judging yourself for what works for you, not beating yourself up for it, but having a total unconditional acceptance and approval of all of you. And it's kind of a double side there, because when we operate out of resistance, we're pushing things away from us. There's two sides of resistance, I feel. There's one where we push away, and there's one where we push forward, or we push onto. So that creates resistance either way. If I'm trying to open a door that someone else has closed, there's a resistance there, there's a friction there. Or if I'm trying to open a door that doesn't want to open, there's going to be resistance there. And so resistance is one of those things that can actually block the natural flow. So for example, if we think about a river, the river is able to adapt to every current that happens. It doesn't resist. It doesn't try to go upstream. If I'm a fish in the river, it's not trying to swim upstream or against the current. It's allowing the current to take it wherever it does and allow it to lead it to wherever it goes. And it's trusting the river. It's surrendered to the river. The fish has surrendered and is completely trusting the river to take it to where it needs to go. And it gets there safely and has no problems, right? And so when we go with the flow or go against the flow, we create a lot of access. We create a lot of exhaustion. We work harder instead of working smarter. And, going with the flow also can really keep you, not really, but it does keep you in the present moment. If I'm a fish in a river, I'm not thinking about the ocean that I'm going to, or, the lake that I came from. I'm literally sitting in this current that I'm in right now, fully present, fully acceptance of it. And that's a big part of creating the law of attraction, is surrendering, trusting, having faith, all of those things, instead of trying to force your way, because that's what resistance is. Resistance is a force. So it's not to force against what's currently happening, or to force against anything else. And secondly, with resistance, when we resist what is, we kind of create a double resistance. Like, for example, If someone is meditating, and again, I've said this in previous episodes about meditation, the goal is not to necessarily eliminate your mind from thinking, but it's to be in the present moment and to accept whatever shows up as if you chose it for yourself. So if I'm in a meditative state and I think about my to-do list or whatever, think about a to-do list and I resist it by going, nope, can't think about that. Get away. I'm meditating. I'm real zen right now. Stop it. Get away from me. That's creating a resistance. And then due to the law of attraction, I'm going to start thinking about my to-do list even more. So the law of attraction always works, regardless of how we try to push things away from us. It's always working. And so instead of perhaps doing that, being completely open and accepting to whatever happens in that meditative state. So say, for example, I'm meditating and I think about my to-do list. I know I'm meditating and I know I just thought about my to-do list. Instead of pushing it away or judging myself for meditating and getting zenned out, I can just observe and recognize I just thought about my to-do list. And then when it's time for it to go, I bid it farewell. And I feel like that's part of the backfiring, that can be part of the backfiring effect of some influences of the spiritual community. It can almost encourage bypassing of emotions, encourage bypassing of the spiritual process, or encourage almost a state of denial and manipulation and what was the other thing I was thinking? But basically, I feel like, positive affirmations, Positive affirmations work if you actually are attuned and in agreement with those affirmations. And that's a whole nother topic there. But all of those things work according to the law of attraction. So when we try to resist the natural flow, the natural ebb and flow of things, it actually just brings more of that to our attention. So when we go with the flow, the things that we can gain will be openness, things like adaptability, flexibility, living in the moment, freedom, liberation, versus not going with the flow. If we're not going with the flow, we're rigid, we can be in a state of resistance and closed off, right? And I think another thing that happens, another program that gets installed, I call this the have to and should program, where we operate from a state of obligation. When we operate from a state of obligation, we are out of the water and not in the flow of who we naturally are. Life should not feel like an obligation. It should feel like a want, I chose this for myself, a desire. But when we get into that weight, that heaviness of obligation, and most of us have experienced this, for those of us who were conditioned to go to school, to public school, private school, we couldn't necessarily say, hey, I don't want to go to school today. Well, guess what? Whoever is in charge might say, you have to go. I'm taking your butt to school right now, regardless, right? And then get programmed in that way, grow up, become an adult, and continue that same modified program. I'm an adult. I have to go to work. I have to make money. I have to. I should, I have to get married. I should want kids. I should have this. I should be that. And then it creates these different methods that create more of the same. Again, the law of attraction is always working. But if that's not actually the life that you want to live, there is an alternative route. And most people never find it. It's a very, very, very narrow path. And most people rarely choose it. And so when we're going with the flow, we're able to observe, acknowledge, and then consciously choose and make decisions from a conscious place. So it's not necessarily the whole cliche, follow your heart, follow your mind, follow your gut. It's not all of that. It's all realizing that everything is connected. Everything works together, not negating one for the other, realizing that they're all equally powerful and they need to work together to get us to where we're going. And so a lot of us grow up with that state of resistance because we're resisting our true selves. We're resisting, and then we're resentful, right? Some of us could become resentful because we've chosen the path of other people, or we've neglected ourselves. We've abandoned ourselves in order to be there for someone else, or to live up to a certain standard or societal approval, instead of doing what was authentic and true and naturally resonant within us. And so I encourage you to get back in the water, to go with the flow, In addition, with going with the flow is that piece about surrender. Detours are going to happen. We can't control for everything in life. But what we can control is our perspective. A perfect example, I was talking to a young member of my tribe, and they were telling me a story about how they were resisting change. They were resisting change, knowing that they had to move to a different location, and they were going to be stripped of everything they knew, and realized that they were focusing on what they were losing instead of focusing on what they could gain. So when we focus on what we can gain versus what we may lose, when we change our perspective in that way, we open up the door to a whole new reality. And so, for example, if you're going with the flow and, the river is going in one way, the current is driving you one way, but then there's a detour. Or, going back to the river example, there's a tree in the water, so the path is blocked. Got to go a different route. Now, initially, they might be kicking and screaming, but the sooner we can attune and adjust our perspective to realize everything works for our good, to realize that, to go with every change in every course. To me, it's great to make plans, but the plan is to have no plan, because plans can always change to be, as I mentioned, adaptable and flexible and open and capable to adjust to the ambiguity of life, because that is a strength, and that is also how to maintain that positive posture of always adapting to the flow, always going with the flow and not against it. So swim downstream and not against it, not upstream, not against the current, and start to see how things will start to change when we open that river to flow. And if there's any fear or any, apprehensive feelings about it, just realize that there's no right or wrong. That's another part of the law of attraction, is our beliefs. There is no right or wrong when it comes to the law of attraction. It's a universal law that works regardless if we're aware of it or not. So there's no getting it wrong. We can't get this life wrong. There's no right or wrong. And if you ever feel fear about, I don't want to go with the flow, or what if it takes me somewhere I don't want to go, or, any of that talk that might come up for you, just realize that comes up for us, all of us, self included, is that all rivers lead to the ocean. So there's no wrong path. There's no right or wrong. There's no missing the boat. You can't miss what's for you, ever. So just realize that all rivers lead to the ocean. All bodies of water lead to the ocean. It's all connected. So I leave that with you. In addition to that, I'm going to give you a couple of recommendations to listen to. My little shameless plug segment here. I did an episode called GPS, God's Protection Service. Now, it's not a religious thing, but it's basically, if you ever feel lost on your path or directionless or clueless or whatever, I talk about the GPS and how, no matter how many times your path reroutes, your destination remains the same. So that episode goes into depth about that. That might be beneficial to some people, again, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. And then the other episode I'm going to recommend is called Would You Rather Be Laughed At? And that's an oldie, but perhaps goodie from season 1. And it's really about, it's kind of a hinting at shadow work, but it's really also about not being in resistance to ourselves, because when we're in resistance, again, we're not in the state of allowing. So I would recommend checking those out if you're interested in those. Feel free to leave a review. Feel free to subscribe, star comments, hit me up. I'm always here for you guys. So thank you all for listening. Until next time.